So, you've been doing so incredibly well the past couple of months. Your story, I think, is a really inspirational one and one that I think a lot of people will relate to. So, first, I just want to thank you for taking a couple minutes to share some of the insights, the reflections that you've had, some of the key things that have helped you get from there to here. And it's going to change a lot of people's lives and really pay it forward. So, thanks for doing that. Everyone tends to have kind of like that one moment that they kind of believe was sort of like their lowest moment, like right before they got the insights, they got the help, they figured out what they needed to figure out.
Hmm.
For some people, it's like a panic attack while driving or whatever. So
Hmm.
the first question I would have for you is, does a moment like stick out to you like that? Like a moment that you would consider kind of have
Hmm.
been kind of the lowest before you started using our process that you could tell us about?
I don't think there is a specific moment, but I experienced my first like huge panic attack in February, and I think things kind of slightly improved after that. But in the summertime is when I noticed the anxiety, like the lingering anxiety creeping in. And I don't think there was necessarily a big moment, but I noticed that really taking a toll on my relationships, particularly my marriage, and then as also being a mother. And I was just like more irritable, snapping more. And I was like, okay, this isn't me. I can't live like this. This isn't fair. This isn't fair to me. It's not fair to my husband and my kids either.
That's a really big revelation for people to kind of realize like they've got to look inwardly and make some of those changes. What else was kind of like running through your mind before you reached that point of decision where you're like, okay, I got to make a change? Like what other kind of narratives were kind of running through your head, and just kind of talk us through like what the day-to-day life experience was like for you back then?
I mean, I was in my head a lot, so overthinking things, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, and I think that contributed to some depression also. Like, so it really started as anxiety, but it led into other things, like in just not being happy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I recall, a couple of those big dominant voices were like we all tend to have that version of you're not enough, and
Yeah,
yours was like taking more of the form of you're not doing enough, you didn't do it well enough, right? Like those kinds of things.
yeah,
Like what do you
yeah.
remember kind of running through your head back then?
That's right. And also just like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. Some of your typical, I think, negative beliefs that
Right.
fall into those situations.
Well, and it's impossible to have a successful relationship with anyone when you don't have a successful relationship with yourself. It's
Hmm.
impossible to like let the love of somebody else in and trust it and
Hmm.
really believe that it's not going to go away when
Hmm.
when you're questioning your own sense of self-worth. It's tough to let that in and then also to let it out, right?
Actually, another one was like I'm not deserving
Mm.
of love.
So the common one, that's the oldest story. That's the oldest story in all of our heads, that we're not
Mhm.
deserving for whatever reason. Now, was there like a straw that broke the camel's back? Like, was there a moment where you were like, okay, that, like when you were saying, okay, this is not fair to me, not
Hmm.
fair to my kids. Was there a moment that kind of like made you realize, okay, I got to make a change? Like, what happened there?
Well, I wanted to stay committed to my marriage. Like, I wanted to stay in that relationship, and I just saw it falling apart. And I was no longer going to settle for that. Like, that wasn't going to be okay for either of us. Yeah, I think that's when I was like, okay, I need to do something different to make a change.
And you also come from a background where you have had a lot of skills, like in the mental and emotional arena.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was a voice holding you back, but I know it has been for me. Like it's been a
Hmm.
thing where I kind of tell myself, well, you should be able to figure this out. And so it keeps
Hmm.
you from like asking for help. Was that going on for you?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the hardest parts. So I see a couple of different things there. One, like, this is what I do. I should know how to do it. I can fix it myself. Those blocks definitely got in the way. And then also, as things started to kind of fall apart more, it's like, well, I do help other people, but how can I help other people? Yet my life is falling apart. And so there was an alignment there, and that didn't feel good.
Yeah, I think that's always the one of the big breakthroughs people have to have is like people like yourself. There's a type of person out there where the beliefs that they've reinforced for a lifetime are I got to solve other people's problems, I got to do it all, and my happiness has to come last. And so when you've got those beliefs going on, it just becomes totally unsustainable. You're
Right.
running yourself ragged. And so the big thing I always try to help people understand is like putting yourself last is actually what puts everybody last. Like if you really want to put your marriage and your family first, you have to put yourself first. If you got anxiety that's festering, it's going to be the number one thing that's impacting your household. A lot of
Mhm.
parents are unaware of this, but like even when with older children, like once, between like 8 and 15, when it's common for mental health problems to start showing up for kids. What most parents don't realize is that the vast majority of kids who demonstrate mental health problems, it's because the parents have a mental health problem that's not being
Sure.
dealt with. So if you don't deal with the mental health issues and or the relationship issues, it's going to manifest in a strange way with the kids. And so
Mhm.
it really is true that like if the parents are all right, almost always the kids are all right too. So it sounds like that was a big belief shift for you, right? Like, okay, I got to
Yes.
deal with this. Yeah.
Definitely. And
Cool.
I didn't want to pass that on to the kids. I mean, I want them to, one, see me and my husband together as strong and as loving. I want that to be their model. Yeah, to also be cognizant of how this could impact them, and
Mhm.
how can I take care of myself so that I can better take care of them.
Yeah, you're hitting on something so key, a little more advanced than I usually get into on these, but like the number one thing I'm always trying to share with clients who have kids who are wanting to like do right by their kids is like the number one thing you can do is provide a template. And your child is not going to, nor should they try to be exactly like you, but like as
Hmm.
children, we all decide what part of our parental template we adopt and what part we reject. And so that's how we form our own identity. So like if you just simply are able to showcase what a successful marriage looks like or how to deal with life's challenges without totally losing it, then it goes so far. And a lot of parents, I don't know if you were in this mode, I'm curious, but a lot of parents think like they pay more attention to what they show their kids. So like they'll be freaking out on the inside, right? They'll be super tense and all that stuff, but they'll just, smile and put on like this happy face. And they think that that's being a good parent. And they think that they're insulating their kids. Like they think that they're totally keeping their kids separate from what's going on. And that's not what happens. Like all of us as kids know what it was like growing up.
Hmm.
And we always saw right through the bullshit of our parents when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like we always could feel what our parents were feeling. Like it's not about what your kids see, it's
Hmm.
what they feel when they're around you. But we put that mask on so commonly, you know what I mean? Okay, cool. So question for you, you decided, okay, I got to get help. And so, I'm sure you were, looking around at different things and, there's all sorts of, very valuable processes and methods and all sorts of things out there. When you encountered us and my team and what we do, just be as honest as possible. Like, were you skeptical? Like what was kind of running through your mind? Like what sort of doubts or uncertainties did you have about using our process?
Right. I mean, kind of in being in this field, there was definitely some skepticism there. Like, what don't I already know? So I think that was a thing. But I don't know, when I looked into it, I was like, why not try? Because what I'm doing clearly is not working. So we need to do something different.
Right. Cool. So let's highlight like a couple of the big changes or transformations, right? So there's no way we're going to be able to like take all 90 days and, talk about every single change that you did. But like
Hmm.
if we can try to give people who are viewing maybe like two or three takeaways, like if you
Hmm.
look back on the past couple of months, what do you think were like the two or three biggest changes that you made? Either like a belief change or just a way you were approaching things? Like what do you attribute to the results?
So I think the first thing goes back to maybe one of our very first meetings, and it was going over rules. And I think realizing the rules that I had in place and how I understand why they were my rules, but how unrealistic that is. And that's not is what's going to bring me peace or anybody peace. And so I think putting that into perspective is like, okay, I can do something to make a shift here. I
And
think
for
this,
the people, do you mind if I just add a little to so the people listening have some context on that? Yeah, so like the way we call a rule for those of you guys who don't know is a rule would be like a requirement or like a it's a subconscious belief about what you feel like you have to have in order to have peace. And what most people don't realize is you have dozens, if not hundreds, of subconscious rules. So you don't even realize that your mind is putting these rules on yourself, on your kids, on your partner, on your boss. And so, the example we like to use is like playing chess versus playing checkers. Like playing checkers is way more fun and enjoyable for most people because there's fewer rules. It's simpler. It's a simpler game. So it's easier to win. Whereas if you play chess, it's more complicated and so forth. So a lot of times people don't even realize they've collected all these subconscious rules throughout their life. They have no clue how to pluck them out of their brain and like look at it and go, oh my gosh, I didn't even
Mhm.
realize that that was there, much less eliminate it. And so what they've really done is they've created an unwinnable game of life for themselves and for their partner
Mhm.
potentially. And so everything just feels way more difficult and way more heavy.
Yeah, so being able to, one, I think, identify that and to restructure that
Yeah.
was valuable. I think the second thing was, okay, I need to make a conscious choice on what I'm choosing to focus on and also the outcome
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
what I'm choosing to focus on and the outcome that that's going to give me as opposed to like letting my emotions
Hmm.
control what is
Sure.
happening. So I don't think I mentioned earlier, I think me being reactive, especially with my husband and kids, was one of the things that I knew needed to be different. And so choosing what I focus on and the outcome, I think helped to shift that piece of it.
And by the way, I have to just give you like a really, really emphatic piece of credit here because so many people who are watching this are going to be in a state where they are feeling unheard, unseen, disrespected, that their feelings are being hurt. They're going to be feeling in that same sort of place that you were in. And when you're in that place, the natural tendency that the mind creates is it looks for an escape route and it looks for
Mhm.
a way to externalize the blame because none of us want to say I'm the problem. Like I have to, I need to change or I need to do something different. The mind has a defense mechanism where it just doesn't even allow that narrative to come
Mhm.
in easily. And so the default for most people when they're feeling reactive in their relationship is to go, well, that thing is the problem. This person is the problem. Because all I know is whenever I interact with that person, I get triggered and I feel anxious and I feel upset and I feel insecure. And the thing I try to differentiate for people is like, you've got to be very clear on the difference between a trigger and the source of the problem. Like there's a big difference between
Mhm.
the thing, like having a big open wound on your arm. It's like a big difference between somebody just touching that open wound and you going, hey, you hurt me. And really that wound has been there for a really, really long time. And so
Mhm.
like I have to give you so much credit because you came into this process already knowing I've got to do work on me. Like I've got to
Mhm.
turn inward. I've got to figure out what is going on with me. Because if I don't, not only is this marriage not going to go well, but if I were going to, pull the band-aid off and leave, like who's to say I won't just cause the same problem somewhere else,
Yeah.
which is what most people do.
And I think, to be fair, it was before we met, it was to that point where the blame was, why aren't you doing this? Or why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And so that blame was there. And then I took a minute to reflect and I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like, if I have a client in my room, what am I going to be telling them? And so I did some self-reflection before even meeting with you. And I was like, okay, what can I control here? Let's take the ball back. And
Yes.
this is my stuff and I can control this. So let's get help with that. So
That's
I
amazing.
had had that self-awareness prior to meeting.
Which is great because that's exactly the headspace you want to come into the process of doing the work on, right? Like that old phrase, like you have to want to change is
Yeah.
true. So we've got identifying your old subconscious rules, letting go of some of those and rewriting some of those. That's big. Do you feel like there was another, you said changing what you focus on. So can you say a little bit more about that? What do you mean there?
I think more or less that was thoughts, like what thoughts am I choosing to focus on? And then also my environment. Like, what is around me?
Mhm.
What am I choosing to focus on? Is it a big deal? Is it a little deal? I don't need
Right.
to overreact to things that it doesn't need that.
Right. Okay, awesome. And do you have a third one? You don't have to, but I'm curious if you do.
Yes. So the values one, reflecting back on that and putting self-love at the top, I think that was another big one. And along with that, I think one of the phrases we came up with, like, I refuse to treat myself that way.
Yes.
Just that word refuse, like I refuse to do that to myself, or I refuse to beat myself up.
Yes.
I think that was helpful in terms of aligning me with that self-love
Yes.
quality.
Yeah, and I'll add a little more color on that for people to have something that they can start to use. So the first one, I'll on the refuse, we use that language specifically because you don't get the life that you want. You get the life that you tolerate, right? And same with every other aspect of your life. You get the quality of marriage that you tolerate, not the quality of marriage that you want. You get the physical body and health, right, that you tolerate, not that you want. So, and that was a big breakthrough that took me a long time to figure out because so much of the human experience is people spending time in what I call the realm of desire. And the realm of desire is when we're coming up with goals and we're wishing and we're dreaming and we're saying, man, I wish it was like this and I need to change this and I should do this and I ought to do this. But rarely do we then take those shoulds, want tos, ought tos, have tos, and then turn them into this is what's going to happen. Rarely
Hmm.
do we become super definitive and super clear and practice the skill that I call internal boundary setting. Like you have to be willing to set a boundary with yourself in order to make sure that you actually get the life that you really want. And people forget you can set a boundary with yourself around whether you are willing to beat yourself up or not. You can have a
Hmm.
boundary with yourself over whether or not you are going to obsess over this one particular thing. Like you can redraw those lines, right, as to
Hmm.
what you are willing and not willing to do. So that's a fantastic thing. And it sounds like what you're saying is one of the most important boundaries you set for yourself is to no longer withhold love from yourself, basically, right? To
Hmm.
like not make your
Hmm.
self-worth conditional. Is that right? And so when Carrie's talking about the values, for those of you guys who don't understand kind of how that works, like your nervous system is currently wired to chase after a certain set of priorities. Whether you know what those priorities are or not, I promise you, your nervous system is chasing after a set of priorities. And for most people with anxiety, it's either you're trying to be totally certain of things or you're trying to prove that you're good enough in some form or fashion. You're perfect enough, you achieved enough, you're pleasing people enough, whatever. And so we usually will say, well, I gotta be enough and then I'll be worthy of love down here. So we're kind of chasing after whatever version of enough we think we got to do, and then we'll give ourselves permission to let love in and trust it and be loving to ourselves.
Hmm.
And when you do that, you always feel like your cup is empty. You always feel like you're in a scarcity place. And so what Carrie learned to do is to say, I'm not going to put my self-worth up for negotiation. Like me being loving and kind and my own advocate to myself is my top priority. That's my number one
Hmm.
must. And it's amazing how your relationships flourish, right? Like once you make that change, because
Hmm.
now you're not, that wound is no longer there that your partner bumps up against, right? Now you've actually
Hmm.
healed the wound, and the wound that was created long, long time ago was believing I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy of love, which is
Hmm.
just a fiction.
And I think to piggyback off of that, putting self-love first has helped me to lead with love.
Right.
And
Right.
that's been helpful.
I'm sure I told you this one before, but for the people who haven't heard, it's like before, right? When you feel like you're not worthy of love, it's like you're going with an empty cup to your partner and you feel empty. And then you get pissed off that your partner's not filling your cup up with love, right? And then you both just get reactive and horrible. So then if you just decide,
Hmm.
I'm going to fill my cup up, right? I'm going to be loving to myself. Now your cup overflows, and now you're like, well, I got plenty of love to give. Who wants some love? You want some love? You want some love? It just makes it so much easier to have your relationships flourish.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, that kind of transitions to maybe just last two or so questions here for you. So now that you've made those changes, what has changed in your life? What are you able to do now that you weren't able to do before, or just,
Mhm.
what's different?
So I think the leading with love thing has really helped my connection with my husband for sure, and also with my kids. Like I'm able to identify moments now where I would have been set off in the past, and I can now be like, okay, I'm going to choose to not react over that. And that's not the energy that any of us need. It's interesting to like actually be in those moments and be like, oh, I'm really like holding myself together right now.
Right.
And I will give myself permission to like walk away and take a break if I need to do that. But there are just so many more moments where I would have either taken something personally or just been very reactive and then felt guilty about my reaction. And that just isn't happening now.
So before, all of that reactivity and sensitivity was taking up a lot of space and a lot of energy, right? So what is now filling that space for you guys now?
More calmness, more peace, just being more of a family unit. And yeah, we just get to enjoy the time together
Did
more.
did you notice a change in your kids, like your kids' energy as your energy changed?
I think so to some degree, like their emotional regulation. I mean, I can't say too much about that. I know I'm not feeding into them. Their reactions to things have been less just because I'm not creating that opportunity for them to do that.
The environment shapes us, right? Like whatever energy we're kind of getting steeped in is gonna, change the quality of who we are. So is there like a moment or two that comes to mind, like I don't know, maybe just a moment or two that was really special to you, like after you've kind of finished this work where you're like, oh my gosh, wow, like this is a moment I would have never enjoyed before, or maybe a moment where you were serving one of your clients. I'm just curious, like what have been like one or two like big highlight moments in the past couple of weeks for you?
I think just being able to be more present at home with my kids and enjoying our moments together. Like, I mean, simple things, right? Walking out to the bus or cuddling before bedtime. Like, I don't have to go back through and do a repeat of the day. And there's always things that we could have done better, but I don't have to beat myself up like I did before.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us about a little bit about what you're doing with your career? You're paying it forward, you're giving back to other people. What does the future kind of hold for you professionally and otherwise?
Right now, I work mainly with military families. I also do some private practice on the side, and I just care about people and I care about their mental health. So I want to continue that journey and help them. Even before this, I've gone through other things before, but I think the more you go through, the more you grow
Yeah,
through. And
yeah.
so being able to be relational with people and relate to them in that way, I think kind of humbles us as humans. I don't know, makes us more accessible. Like we can relate.
That's another gift you've given just by providing us with a little bit of your time today. And so many people will relate to you. And as they relate to you, they'll see themselves in you and they'll be able to realize they can make a change too. So it's a huge
Absolutely.
gift. I admire so many things about you, your sense of self-responsibility, your tenacity. You've had high standards for yourself, but what I admire most is your generous soul. The phrase I like to use is like the secret to living is giving, right? Like once you
Mm.
start getting in that state where you're just giving and giving, it's amazing how everything turns around. And that's what I see with you. You're in a state of giving with your husband, with your kids, with your clients, and with yourself, right? Where you weren't
Mhm.
before.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
so thrilled for your future. It's going to be a really amazing thing. So, yeah, keep in touch. Give us an update every now and again and wish the absolute best to you and your family, okay?
Thank you so much, Ty.
All right, Carrie, take care. See ya.
Bye.